Octave Rising.
Wee-hoo, wee, 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 wee. We are back for the third part of covering all of these amazing visions and downloads from Justine's journey here. And this third part, I guess, is about dimensional access, which sounds really cool. So I don't know anything, so
Yeah.
let it roll.
Here we go, dimensional access. So as the experience progressed, most of this did occur kind of later on, which, you know, in the process, things start to really expand. And it's so interesting with this medicine because it's very typical for the person to feel like, oh, nothing's happening, nothing's going on, because it's so different and it operates on a very different dimension and plane than other experiences that tend to be like very visionary. And so the description, you know, of what I've been describing up until this point, and even this sounds very visionary, but it also had that quality of feeling like almost bored. And then I would find myself coming back into consciousness and feeling like, whoa, I just explored some realm, because you're very much in the unconscious mind element. And so, yeah, just want to name that. And as it progresses, it typically takes a new shape in the experience. And so that's what was occurring here, where it moved more away from the personal processing and this whole AI thing, and a lot of distortions, and feeling this, you know, clearing out infiltrations into a little bit more of journeying. And that really came on with this activation around art and creativity. And I used to make a lot of art and felt very artistic and creative. And it's been a long process of turning away from that and feeling like I don't have time, or if I'm going to make something with my hands, it should be productive, it should be related to our house and all these projects that we have going on here. And since building my own house with Zane, I did damage my hands during that process that I wasn't fully aware of until this experience. And I also rejected my hands, which is, it's so interesting because two of the main parasites that I cleared through this process were the need to feel productive and the need for other people to see me as competent, or the fear of other people seeing me as incompetent. And both of those things also so much relate to the hands. Productivity, so much of it comes through the hands. And competency also, so much of it comes through the hands. And so there was all of this work that was going on with my hands. And since the house, Zane and I both, while we were building, experienced trigger finger, where our hands were like locked into a position and they would click out of that position. And sometimes when I don't have enough nutrients or I'm dehydrated, my thumb will sort of like wither towards the palm of my hand. And that was starting to happen on the medicine. And, you know, because I had been fasting. And so the medicine was working so much on the hands. And there's, you know, a light surgery component that I will talk about. But then it was also working through the circulatory system to increase blood flow. And I really experienced that lack of blood, or impure blood, is the root of almost all of our sickness. And I got taken into my bloodstream to really experience circulation. And I had this feeling of this contained system. And our body does create new blood, of course, but it's felt like this finite quantity circulating through my body that I was able to explore and then feel into where areas that are blocked, and where is there not enough plasma in the blood, and where is the blood dehydrated, and where is the blood impure, where impurities stored in the blood. And so there was this amazing inward exploration of the blood and the purity of the blood. And that's so much been the past couple years of sickness that we've seen, is actually blood toxicity and impurities in our blood. And so as I was working there, I was working on learning how to circulate more blood in my hands, and they got so hot, and I could just feel that because of that blood flow, that is the vitality of the system. And my hands were healing during that time. And I felt this amazing activation to feeling good about working with my hands again, and that it's okay if I'm not good at building something, but I do actually like it. I have always liked it my whole life, and it really was fear of it not being good enough, or that I wasn't really that good at it, so I shouldn't be doing it. And that cleared. And then it became this visionary expansion around artwork, but in a realm of light and color and sound, and using my hands to create in this realm. And one of the creations was this little guy, because I love guys. And when I was a kid, I used to draw these fantasy creatures. And he was this tiny humanoid guy with this sort of imprinted upon head with these 6, 3 on each side, horns that went out to the side, not forward or back, out to the side, and curled around and up and in. And then those held this plasma, and they were encapsulated by this biofilm, and the plasma was actually the brain of this creature. And that's where I got the download that our brains are light technology. And in this third dimension, they are a muscle, they're meat, they're very material. There's a lot going on with blood and the movement of the brain, but then because of the way electrical impulse moves through the brain, it is such a high form of light technology that I did discuss in the previous episode, describing the ray that is meant to go through our brains when this implant is removed. And we have more of a crystalline structure in the brain, which is part of why the pineal gland, the attempts to calcify it, are so important, because that interrupts the crystalline resonance of the pineal gland. And then, of course, as we restore that implant, that crystalline structure comes back in at the base of the neck, and the light technology of the brain that is more than just electrical impulses can come online. And so that art activation just kind of continued into this space and realm of creation and creating guys, but then also just creating imagery with 3-dimensional light lines, and really feeling excited about stepping back into my creativity. And one aspect of that exploration was asking about dimensionality in these different dimensions, because I felt like I was in this primordial creation realm. And so I asked to kind of take a tour of the dimensions of space. And I learned that space is curved, but it's not spherical. It is a spiral. And there's these overlapping spirals that you could think of a toroid, that it goes up and around and then it expands into the next dimension and continues up and around and expands into the next dimension. And because it's a spiral, not all dimensions have the same depth. And when I took this tour, I learned that the 3rd, the 5th, the 8th, the 13th, and so on were the dimensions that held the most depth and the most, I don't want to use the word material because some, the higher dimensions are more just light, but they're more of the creation realms, and those numbers are the Fibonacci sequence. And that is the golden ratio, the golden spiral. And so the 4th dimension, for example, is very compressed, and it's almost like an in-between dimension for the 3rd and the 5th. And I was asking about the 4th in particular because there's so much dialogue in the alternative community about the 5th dimension and ascending to the 5th dimension. And I was like, well, the 5th dimension is so awesome. I mean, when you tune into it, it's very similar to the 3rd dimension, but things are more light and less dense and bigger. And there's just a lot of vitality and life force, and it's very, very similar, but less dense, I guess, is the best. Of course, it's a couple octaves higher. And the 4th dimension is not really ever discussed. It's bypassed. And when I went to the 4th dimension, it's empty. And it's something that Zane and I have talked about, and maybe it exists elsewhere too. And I've thought about the 4th dimension was very much hijacked for the soul recycling grid and the astral plane around Earth and the Dyson sphere that was around Earth. And sure enough, the stellar gateways are open and the 4th dimension is vacant. It's not, and it had been kind of manipulated to almost encapsulate the 3rd dimension to make space appear spherical, that the 3rd dimension is this encapsulated sphere, almost like these concentric spheres, and then the 4th totally encapsulates the 3rd, and so on. But it's really not that way because of the spiral nature of these dimensions. And there's these interesting areas of overlap that exist as well that I will describe in a minute, but I want to pause and see if there's anything you want to add before I just keep sharing here.
I don't know. I think you should just keep going.
Okay.
It's epic. I mean, it's
awesome. So, the Fibonacci sequence and those numerical values, I was seeing that as an octave scale. And in music, we describe octave as a very specific thing, but there's also different theories of music that have different, an 8 octave or 12 octave or whatever the keys are. And so I was seeing that it is, I do now really understand where this ascension to the 5th comes from, because that is the next octave of creation in this exploration of dimensions. And after the 5th would be the 8th, and after the 8th is the 13th, which is really Prime Creator's realm. And within each dimension, there are layers. And so I don't think it's important to get hung up on, well, there's 188 dimensions. What do you mean the 13th is Prime Creators? Because within all of these dimensions it's a hollow fractal. There's these layers in there. And so we don't need to get hung up on, which dimension, right? But, this was just my experience in it, and is a vocabulary that I'm using to describe this pattern of octaves and sort of this then very source frequency realm.
Like in music, there's half tones, right? Or like, so you can divide octaves into many different compartments. And when you're talking about, the perspective of frequency, the resonant frequency of any object, let's say in the third dimension, in a material dimension, then you can go down to a half or a quarter of that, and it will actually resonate to the same frequency band. It might have more or less intensity, but yeah, it's basically we want to compartmentalize something that can't really be compartmentalized, but there is sort of a divine universal mathematics with which we could better interpret it. It's not from the lens of rigidity of our minds, which have been programmed to use a base 10 number system, which doesn't necessarily apply to the cosmos at higher levels. So.
Exactly, and it's a representation of a three-dimensional understanding, and that's such a potent thing to bring up, because as I was like really, and I'm already obsessed with Fibonacci. I'm a math teacher. I do love math because I do feel that there is this pure avenue in it, and there's so much distortion and overlay and synthetic linear infiltrations into mathematics, but there's also this exquisite relationship to our observation of natural and cosmic phenomenon that I just find very engaging to me personally. And as I was like, oh my gosh, duh, dimensions of space are the Fibonacci, like, yes! I was trying to visualize, like, well, wait a minute, I'm visualizing spiral as a two-dimensional curved line, but what if I tried to visualize it as this three-dimensional overlapping systems of third dimension, fifth dimension, eighth dimension, and then there's this toroidal interaction that's occurring between them and in the center of them all, and then it just got so too much, and there was a point where I was like, I can't see any more than this because of the limitations of my brain right now. And so it's a way of trying to translate these bigger than mathematics or English language, confines. And so at that 13th dimension, I was feeling prime creator. And I asked, when are you going to get involved in the situation here? And I was feeling the entire AI thing, and the infiltration of hopelessness did try to creep into my journey, particularly around all the AI that I talked about in the previous episode, and self-replication, before I really fell into that cell replication reversion and exponential versus linear experience. And prime creator, the feeling that came in was us being here is prime creator getting involved. And I saw that on the 12th dimension, which is just, one step down, is this realm of basically squiggly lines. And that source or creator, whatever your vocabulary is, in that realm has begun to differentiate itself into frequencies, distinct frequencies of sound or visible light, or what would to us be invisible light. And that's the beginning stages of differentiation from universal consciousness and beingness into individual expression. And I tuned into my aspect of, my own resonant frequency in that realm, and saw how even in that realm, there's infiltration. There's this it's almost like sine wave versus a sawtooth wave or a triangle wave. And in that realm, you can see and feel and experience very clearly what is Prime Creator's expression of creation in this organic universe and what is synthetic. And even on that dimension, Prime Creator is distinguishing itself into our resonant frequencies to trace down what's not resonant and clear it out of that realm. And so I saw the entire step down process from this 12th dimensional beginning of individuation from source consciousness, from unity consciousness, down into the physical. And this is what Prime Creator getting involved looks like. Prime Creator has to actually come into physical form in order to work on that plane. And it just feels like such a powerful experience of truly tracking all the way to source my own pure connection there, and how I am this unity consciousness differentiating itself to be able to translate down to this dimension to help clear it out, which I've described in my previous South African download from that journey, the idea of the drain plug and why the third dimension is so potent. And when I went to the second and first dimension, they're very much the building blocks of the third dimension. So it's kind of interesting the way these octaves step and this spiral works, is that some dimensions are kind of more connected into the ones that are stepped up from them, as like this is the sort of foundational elements of something that's going to express in the 3D.
Wow. Oh my god.
Yeah, so okay, shall I continue?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just really quickly, I was just having the conversation the other night with Krisha, because I had gotten a download or insight recently about how, it was for myself personally that I've been through the entire cycle of creation, meaning kind of this thing that you hear described of how the third dimension is a classroom and you're here to learn the lessons of this classroom. And there's this, this outflow and inflow in creation where you leave from source consciousness, you individuate, you go and you have all these experiences all the way through. It's a huge epic thing. And then on the return path, you come all the way back and you merge again with source. And realizing, I've already done all that. That. And then I was talking to Krisha, and she was like, oh yeah, one of my journeys that at some point we'll get her to share here in this format. She's like, not once, so many times, an incomprehensible amount of times. Like, oh, okay. So we chose to come directly this time to this dimension because it's the inflection point where the inversion translates into the underworlds and the hell dimensions, and it's where the most energy is locked into this material form. So it's also per the drain plug analogy, it's not just a really effective, the most effective place to unwrap all of these things that have happened in the universe. It also happens to be probably one of the most confusing places because there's so much distortion here, and this is kind of ground zero for this dimensional war that has ravaged much of our universe and which we are now doing away with.
And this concept too of, us being here as prime creator, getting involved, also, for me personally, related back to that frustration that I was clearing in the beginning of the journey about the way things are. And that's a core essence of my being, is that I'm frustrated about the way things are, and so I keep circulating back through and translating down all of these dimensions to come here to the third, because this is, like Zane is saying, it's such a keystone realm to heal and revert into the organic expression of creation. And as I was exploring this and really feeling like, wow, yes, way to go, guys. And I was feeling everyone who was holding space for me and our team here in Taos and everyone who runs the cleanses with us and all these people that I love and just cheering us on, like, way to go. We are Prime Creator, getting involved. And I just felt this parallel to these action movies and like these Marvel films, and like, here we are coming down from source into the third dimension, we're heroes, and there's this playful energy of this whole experience that we're doing. And I just felt like, wait a minute, this isn't like an action movie. Action movies are like this. And really getting this whole verbal clarity on, life isn't like an action movie. Action movies are like life. And we say this, flip-flopped thing because it makes us feel like real life is mundane. And that is an infiltration. Real life is the most exquisite act in the multiverse. Creation? A tree making a pine cone? I mean, come on. Us translating from the 13th dimension through these light, sound, vibration dimensions down all of these realms into a biological meat sack that contains light technology that's as evolved as the 12th dimension. I mean, that's epic. It's epic. And we diminutize so much
diminish.
Thank you. Thank you. Diminish. We diminish this experience by creating an overlaid life that is mundane. Like, I have to do this paperwork and I have to have this crucial conversation with my boss and I need to ask for a raise and I need to go to the dump and I need to do all those things that make me think that life is mundane, so that I don't see the truth that life is so epic. It's more epic and cosmic and amazing than anything you could watch on TV. And all of TV is meant to distract us from how epic life actually is. Video games are the same. They're to make us feel that life is mundane, that exploring in the actual wilderness isn't exciting because it can be uncomfortable because of weather or bugs or whatever the thing is, or getting dirty, and I should just sit on my computer and play these games and watch this thing because that's more cosmic than life could ever be. And that is such a devastating inversion about the truth of creation. And so when we choose to engage in games or watch movies, really think about all the activations that you get of, I have seen this somewhere in maybe what I called my own imagination, but my own imagination, it's not fake. There is no fake. There's only organic and synthetic. And my imagination is organic and it has access to all of this. Everything that I'm saying, the medicine is a vehicle that we wouldn't even need if we didn't have this implant, because those crystals that are meant to be where that implant is, and that ray is how we would shift our assemblage point. We wouldn't need medicine. You just need the internal resonance, which would be directed with your conscious intent, and you could access all of this. And what's so amazing is that we still do through what we call the imagination. And all of the artwork and all of the movies that people are creating and the books and the exquisite things, even with this implant that is meant to keep us trapped in this mundane, synthetic, overlaid reality, we still make music. We still make art. There is still light technology inside of us that gives us access to this multidimensional, cosmic, incredible reality of which we are creators, because we all come from and return to and come back from and loop around in and spiral out of that infinite realm of creation. And it's just wow. It's just so wow.
Wow. Whoa.
So a couple more things here. Speaking of light technology, I'll just touch on a few pieces there. One aspect that some people have asked me to describe in more detail is light surgery. And so while we're on this topic of light technology and interdimensionality, an aspect of almost all medicines is light surgery. And I think it's so amazing that this medicine tends to anesthetize the body, because what would you do if you were going into physical surgery? You would get anesthesia. And so it is important, and I struggled a little bit more actually on this experience to just stay totally still, but it really helps. And so light surgery is this element, and in my experience with this medicine, these beings come in, and for me it's a group of beings, and they begin with a scan, which is what I and many others describe as buzzing, and they actually perform surgery on your field and your body. And so when the medicine field is created, which can even just be from an energetic attunement to the medicine, if you're not able to ingest it, you can attune to it, that invites it into your field. And the closer you can get to the medicine into the cells, the deeper the surgery will go. So if your energetic attunement is, pretty distant, then the surgery component can happen on sort of an outer layer of your field. And I use the term field to describe dimensions of our being. So it's almost like what Zane's talking about with the half steps. Us as beings are multidimensional even within the third dimension. We're like an onion, and I guess it's more this complex spiraling vortex. And so the surgery element can happen on an outer layer where maybe we're storing astral information, or maybe we're just storing some core essence qualities of our being that then translate through these aspects of our field into the physical. And so when you physically ingest the medicine, and depending on the serving size, really enhances that effect of the being's ability to perform surgery on even a cellular level. And so in my experience, toxicity that was related to a future development of breast cancer was physically removed from the body, and I released it through my bowel system the next day, and I saw it. And so there is this ability to pull these things out, whether it's energetic surgically, or to pull it out and then leverage the incredible ability of the digestive system to remove it, which can be so effective depending on the level of toxicity. And so light surgery can translate through all of those layers, and these beings can really open up your field with such exquisite precision to remove things from any dimension of your being that is storing wounds, trauma, toxicity, or potential sickness.
It's epic.
So that's light surgery and light technology. You know, for example, our brains, or the brain of this guy that I was making in that realm of where I was creating in the art activation, is biological. It's not electricity in the sense that we have on this plane, in this dimension. And I was exploring more into light technology. And of course, crystals are an incredible example of light technology that exist in this dimension. And I was also exploring in other dimensions light technology and biological technology. And so the concept of technology is not something to reject. And coming from my mouth, that is such an epic thing, because I have really rejected technology. I really don't like it, and I've always thought it's an inversion, and that's because AI, synthetic technology, is an inversion of biological, light-infused, intelligent technology that has life force of its own. And what's so great is that we are capable of infusing Earth 3D technology that we have, that is inverted, that is synthetic. We can infuse it with life force. And so we can actually leverage what exists. We will let it go when it's time to let it go, non-attachment to the pretty pathetic technology that we have right now. But while we do have it, here we are recording this on a microphone. We have a recorder here. It's technology that we're infusing this energy into, and we get to really use it to our advantage and have it support our acts of creation in this moment. At the same time, let's use what we call the imagination, but nothing is imaginary, everything is real. So let's use that element of our being to see biological technology. For example, Anastasia talks about how all UFOs are like a kombucha mother. They are alive. Manta ray ships that are massive are alive. Aurora borealis beings, who I call skylight beings, are alive. Aurora borealis is organic light technology and a being at the same time. And I was seeing these almost Miyazaki scapes of these sort of bird-like beings that were moving grids around so that we could move through space and time. So it wasn't even that these beings were like a personal drone lifting me up and moving them. They were actually manipulating force fields in space-time for us to move through space-time. And so organic technology is just, it's so much more expansive than like getting from point A to B in space or time via a vehicle or a communication device. Vehicles and communication devices are linear connections in space-time from point A to point B, and organic technology as having an innate relationship with this spiral complex grid system of space-time and dimensions and octaves. It's more than we can even imagine with this point A to point B with, wow, right, I could, and watch a bird fly. They're manipulating, they're warping space around them. If you watch them enough, you will see what I'm talking about. And so with organic technology, they can do that and we can follow them. And it's just so much broader than the linear synthetic A to B overlay that we have. And speaking just very briefly about biological technology, this concept around command kept coming in as an energy, and Command is a very fine attunement, and on one extreme of command is the idea of control, and on the other extreme end of command is just complete allowing something to essentially command you if you don't have any command. And so this attunement to command is something to work on, to be able to command into manifestation reality. And AI's attempts at command are on the control end of the spectrum, where they're trying to manipulate life to such a degree that they can completely control it. But with biological technology, you can't control it. You can't control a bird. You have to co-create the vision or the expectation or the desire together and invite the biological technology being to participate with you in the creation of that reality. And that is so complex. And that is exactly why also AI can never fully gain control, because it will never fully understand that it has to co-create alongside with us in order for us to fully buy in our energy towards manifestation of these overlaid ideas. And so feeling into, right, I can't just press a bunch of buttons with a manta ray spaceship. I have to communicate with it, and we have to have a relationship, and there has to be a co-creative element to, let's say we want to explore the space between Saturn and Jupiter. We have to decide that together. And that's something that's very empowering, because it really supports or lifts up or honors the free will aspect of the universe. Because in our understanding of synthetic technology, technology doesn't have its own will. I get to input commands into it, and that's actually a violation of free will universe. So AI has not only violated our biological free will, but it's inserted technology so that we also violate free will, which breaks down that code even more, because us as free will biological technology beings are violating that concept. So it is also important for us to re-engage with this idea of co-creation with technology. And one way to do that on an earth plane, not engaging with synthetic technology, is to ask permission. Ask permission from the earth to summit a mountain or go down a river, and really engage in a balanced relationship that has reciprocity and dialogue to be able to participate here. Okay, so then I'll talk about a little bit more of these dimensional overlays. And so in the exploration of these overlapping, spiraling dimensions, there are points of intersection and, of course, overlap of these concentric sort of dimensional spirals. And as I was exploring this translation from the 12th dimension down into the 3rd, I was opening up these windows to be able to view down into the dimension below the one where I was in. And this really came in because of my brother. And I, during the experience, feel everybody in my life that I love and work on them and explore our relationship to see more elements of it. And my brother came in really strongly, particularly when I was exploring this dimensional access, because he, this guy was reading chaos theory in 7th grade. He is an amazing being. And he's also had this theme of twins his whole life. And it's been coming in for me recently that my brother and I were meant to be twins in this life, and he's almost exactly 2 years older than me. We're born 4 days apart. People when we were little used to think we were twins. His friends get confused on who's the older or younger sibling. There's always kind of been this really interesting, intense connection. And I've been thinking for a few years, okay, I must have like dropped the ball and I was late to our birth, and we weren't twins. And that would be so classic because I'm so late and I'm always get caught up in playing with the kitty, and then all of a sudden 2 years have gone by. And so I was in this dimensional realm, particularly in the exploration of the astral realm and these other places where we go after physical death in the 3D, feeling into, okay, what was my plan here and what's going on with this? Was I really truly late? And this is something that came in on another one of my journeys in South Africa of disguise, and recognizing that if us being here is Prime Creator getting involved, that's a big deal. And AI really doesn't want that. And so myself and some others, particularly on our team, really chose to disguise themselves to come in to avoid early childhood targeting. And the idea of soul family plays in because we are meant to typically incarnate with our soul family in different roles, but we come in and we know, I know my family and I know my friends, and these are beings that I've known for so long. And many of us don't feel that way in our life. And some of that is from the soul recycling grid manipulation in the astral plane in the fourth dimension. And some of it is a reversion of that inversion with direct intent as a disguise so that we could hide. And so in this decision to not incarnate with our immediate soul family, who Zane and I have been so lucky enough to find each other, and then our family in Taos, who we run these cleanses with and do this work with, they are the ones that we are meant to come in with, and we came together here. In that process, we chose, not to do that at birth. And so my brother and I really were meant to be twins. And if that had happened, I think where we are in our lives would be different. And we're very powerful beings together. And that was what was meant to have the most impact. But because of this need for hiding and disguise, my brother chose our parents for this life. And I had to figure it out so that it was hidden instead of him communicating directly. And I have a very deep connection to my parents on a soul level, and I love them so much. And at the same time, if everything, the immaculate design probably would have had a different configuration with the immediate family. And so in the process of trying to find who are the people that my brother chose, I need to find them, time went by. And time in the more, astral dimensions beyond the fourth, where I was translating down from, of course, operates very differently. And there, where it might feel like, oh, of course, that's who he would pick. Boom, I'm going in. Oh my gosh, he's already 2 years old. But there was an encodement on timing. So I did come in, 4 days after him, but 2 years after the fact. And so in this exploration of, wow, okay, I'm really learning more about this process and what this whole theme was about twins and our relationship and all of that, I saw these windows of where I would peer down to remote view, like, is my brother there? Are these the people? And I saw in one of the windows that there were these AI beings that were kind of similar to the ones I described that I pulled out of the implant. Of course, they were bigger and fully synthetic and creepy. I mean, they have a icky, heebie-jeebie feeling to them, and they could sense that I was sort of opened up this window down into this realm because they were also trying to find us. And so I pulled myself down into their dimension because we are immortal. As source beings, we are immortal. And in that realm, it's like there's no threat. I can just go stand next to them because I'm an immortal light being. And if a physical construct of me gets returned to energy, then I can generate another form for myself as an immortal light creator being. And so I went down to talk to these guys, and I went into their brain and I saw this replication of the light technology of our brains, and it was just one main electrical impulse. And you can turn them offline by just disconnecting this electrical circuit in their brains. And that's also where, more of the information around the light technology of the brain that I've already shared came in during, linear time in the journey experience. And so it was this really interesting interplay and learning around dimensional access from one to the other and being able to open these windows on different planes and these artificial beings and kind of what they're doing. And they're very interested in tracking beings' incarnations so that they can plan to insert early childhood trauma, which is the main way of redirecting starseeds from their main purpose in being here, and to generate a lot of health issues and autism and things that, learning disabilities that really heavily impact star beings on this planet. And so they're very interested in tracking us and where we come in. And so this idea of really disguising ourselves and hiding is very important. And, I'm grateful for myself that I was able to do that effectively and not generate a lot of early childhood trauma in something where I was directly targeted. And the result of that was that we didn't come in as twins. And, it's interesting to think about what our life path would have been like if that had been the case. And I think the archetype of twins is extremely powerful. And there are stories about these twins in every single religion and mythology and indigenous culture, and what they represent and how they are able to encode more information in their translation here because of the strength of that relationship and the balance in that relationship. And I actually think that twins are the most intimate relationship that you can have with a being to come in with and have that relationship with, because of the advanced sharing in perception and experience, and the way that they can communicate is just so powerful. And so it was so interesting. My brother as a child had 3 sets of twins as his best friends. And how wild if we had been that 4th set of twins, and what that configuration would have been like as well, which is very interesting. And I think the last thing on here that's also related to us being here as prime creator getting involved is the sun. So the sun is a translation point for source energy, is very powerful. And the configuration of suns and galactic cores is a network, a nodal network for source frequency to directly translate life force energy into various realms. And the sun, of course, is the source of life on this planet. And the sun, as he, or she, it, whatever you refer to the sun as, expresses this love that results in the changes that we're seeing with the sun. And here in Taos in April, the light from the sun has become more white, more crystalline, which is amazing because when we were in South Africa in the winter, the sun there was white. And the sun here in New Mexico in the Southwest is typically very yellow, very hot, intense yellow light. And it's become much more gentler, and I don't get sunburned as easily, and the sun is shifting and the solar maximum is approaching. And Anastasia talks about that as the sun gets hotter, which is occurring, solar maximum occurs. That is love beaming down to us, and Creator using this nodal network to beam us more and more love, which is another way of Prime Creator or Creatress getting involved in the situation of, infiltration in these creation realms. And I saw that this being that I love so much, who has transitioned, he was the first man I ever let hold me. He's the blueprint of man that I've been attracted to my whole life. He's an uncle by choice, not by blood, and he's just someone who is a deep soul connection to me. And I saw that he, and then other beings who have transitioned, but through this desire to connect with him in my medicine, I saw that he is part of that beaming energy into the sun. And I went to this place, there was this yellow orange, almost looks like a bouncy ball in this net of light energy. And I was like, what is that? And I saw that Avram, the man I'm talking about, was there with me looking at this orb of glowing light. And he was connected into this light net that was holding this orb of light. And I was trying to get closer to the orb of light, but it was small and I was big in this realm. And he was saying, don't get near it. It's too hot. There's too much energy there for you. And I was like, what is that? What's going on? And I was able to move my perception there. I saw that, whoa, that's our sun in our solar system. And you are holding the sun in this net. And there were all these other beings around the sun. And all these other beings are beings that we know that have transitioned. And they're there working on our sun. And the way that Source uses this nodal network to transfer energy down in isn't from the 13th dimension through some tube of light down, like a filament of light down into the sun. It's through beings. And that's, again, that whole thing that us being here is Prime Creator getting involved. Beings, guys, types of guys, and I love types of guys. Everyone who knows me knows I love aliens and creatures and all of this crazy expression of life. I mean, because it's the expression of life. It's Prime Creator's expression of the differentiated aspects of creation. And so really feeling that, wow, this experience is so much more beyond the individual and beyond this intensity of feeling like we're at war with the way things are, or the synthetic overlay, is this community, this multidimensional community of creatress beings expressing themselves through individuation to bring unconditional love and creative force to this realm right here, right now, for us, because we are worthy of that individuation, that love, that divine creativity. And that is really the fullness of all of this work that we're doing here. So thank you all for participating in the work alongside of us together. And here we go into the being here part of this reality. I'm excited to tune back in more for everything else. Thank you all. Wee wee.